Everybody. We're still learning how to do this. Good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast Sunday morning service. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I'm so glad you're here. I hope you're still here. And to begin our service, Reverend Jenna Watkins, our assistant minister, is going to open us with a prayer and a reading.
Good morning. So let's just take a moment to take a nice deep breath and let it go. And know that we come together in the consciousness of the one who unites us, the consciousness of love, of wholeness, of peace, of harmony. That consciousness flows in and through each and every one of us, for we are one with it, and we are one with each other. And I am grateful for our gathering together because we are a community of love and support, encouraging each other's growth, supporting each other's lives, laughing and crying and loving with each other. I know that this is a place of harmony and peace. And I know that right now that spirit of love flows through the words and heart and mind of Reverend Dr. Ron as he shares his message with us today. A message that will inspire, a message that will touch our hearts in a new and unique way, opening our awareness to a new insight, a new way of being, a new thought, something that allows us to move deeper into the awareness of spirit. I give thanks for all of this, and I let it be, and so it is. So my reading today is from Alan Cohen from a book called The Deep Breath of Life, and it's called Walking the Talk. At a spiritual conference, a sum of money was stolen from the table of one of the vendors. The fellow became angry and sought to lay blame. When the theft was announced to find out if anyone in the large audience had any information, silence ruled. Then the speaker named Carolyn raised her hand and suggested, I would be willing to auction off a counseling appointment and donate the money to the man who lost his income. Who will make the first bid? By the time the bidding was done, the auction yielded an income of more than twice the woman's regular fee, which equaled the amount the vendor had lost. I was inspired by Carolyn's willingness to help. It showed me that she is willing to live what she teaches. Such integrity is a magnificent demonstration that the spiritual path is only as real as we are willing to live it. Many of us talk a good game, but how many of us put it into action? Lao Tse noted, he who says does not know. He who knows does not say. We do not need to talk a lot about what we are doing. We just need to do it. When we talk too much, we dissipate the energy we could be putting into action. Words, although potentially powerful, are the least reliable index of who we are and what we believe. Emerson noted, what you are speaks to me so powerfully that I can hardly hear what you are saying. We can lie with words, but not with our being. We can fool ourselves and others with rhetoric, but only actions reveal who and what we really are.
Thank you, Jenna. So my topic today is mindful intention, mindful action. And I just want to start with probably what for most of us will be a review of what we know. But you know, we teach in New Thought that all demonstrations first begin as a thought, that thoughts are things, thoughts become things, and that everything is created twice, once in thought or mind and once physically. And you know, just a couple of examples. I don't know what chairs people are sitting on here, but take a look at your chair. I bet some of us have chairs that are made of cloth, some maybe of leather, some are maybe sitting in really big, beautiful, comfortable chairs, some maybe not so comfortable, some have arms, some don't. All of those chairs began as a thought in somebody's mind. The clothes we have on, everything we have on, began with a thought in somebody's mind. I was thinking yesterday, I just some cars popped up on my internet screen, and just look at the diversity in cars. Every design of every car, somebody thought of that first before it was created. And so we also believe, right along with that, that trained thought or focused thought is more powerful than untrained or unfocused thought. And so why do we teach that? Why do we believe that? Because Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living, tells us that we demonstrate from the tendency of our thought. So it's not one thought, but it's what is the tendency of what we're thinking. So when we train ourselves to keep focus on what it is we desire, we're going to see that in our lives. Gary Zukav wrote, "Choice is the engine of evolution. If you choose unconsciously, you will evolve unconsciously. If you choose consciously, you will evolve consciously." So he's saying, in other words, that we don't want to create our life by default. Every day we get an opportunity to write and to rewrite our story. We become the master of our experience when we create mindful intentions and train our mind to create the life of our choosing. You know, Thoreau said, "Live the life you have imagined." And Ernest Holmes wrote, "The power that creates exists before we use it. It can only give us what we mentally take." So you and I all have limitless potential. The power of our intentions are absolutely boundless. And so the question we can ask is, what do you want to create with this power? Dennis Merritt Jones wrote, "Your life is shaped by the choices you make. Are you making them wisely?" And one way to help us choose is to listen. One way to help us choose and make wise choices is to listen to that still small voice, to listen to our intuition. In my own life, I like to refer to it as our divine guide. You know, I read that Puccini said that the music of Madame Butterfly was dictated to him by God. And he said, "I was merely the instrument that put it on paper." So let me give you three more modern day examples of what I mean by following that divine guide. I read a story a few years ago about a woman who was driving cross country, and one night it was dark, and she needed to use a restroom. So she pulled in to a rest stop, parked her car, got out, and walked to the ladies' room. And as soon as she put her hand on the doorknob, she had this intense feeling in her entire body: don't do it. Don't go in there. And it was so strong, she took her hand, walked away, got in her car, and drove away. The next day, she read that 45 minutes later, at that exact stop, at that exact restroom, another woman was murdered. Mary Morrissey, in one of her books, tells a story about a woman who came to her and was telling her a story about how depressed she was. She had lost her job. She felt really lonely. And she hears about a singles potluck, and she says, decides she doesn't want to go. And she hears this voice that keeps telling her, "You need to go." And she ignores the voice because she doesn't want to go. But the voice is persistent. And so she finally decides, okay, I'm going to go. even though I'm going to be an hour late. She gets dressed, rushes out to the store, gets some chips and dip, goes in to the potluck and finds one of the last seats that it's available. And it just so happens to be next to somebody who owns their own business and is looking for somebody with the exact skills that this woman has. And just one more last example that's really personal for me is before I met Becky, she was engaged to somebody else and they were going to get married. And Becky kept getting this hit that she shouldn't go through with the marriage. And it kept coming to her, don't do this. And she didn't listen to it. They did get married. And 3 months later, they got divorced. It's really important when we get those messages to listen and to follow. You know, Lao Tzu, Reverend Jenna quoted Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu also said, at the center of your being, you know the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. So let me ask you another question. What would our lives be like if we aligned our intentions with our actions? What would our lives be like if we aligned our intentions with our actions? You know, in the Bible, it says that faith without works is dead. In fact, one could say faith without works isn't faith at all. The two of them are inseparable. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Work without vision is drudgery, but vision without work is self-deception. The well-balanced person can walk with his head in the clouds and still keep his feet on the ground. Faith and work are ineffective when separated." Think about this. You can sit in a room with a bunch of your friends and talk as long as you want about how terrific electricity is and all the wonders that electricity could bring to our life. But until somebody gets up and turns on a lamp, you're going to be sitting in the dark. The great teachers in our lives, like Jesus, like Gandhi, like Mother Teresa, they all acted on their faith. They didn't just pray and they didn't just think. You know, I read that Mother Teresa went to her superiors really early in her career, and she told them that her goal was to build all these orphanages throughout India. And they said, "How much money do you have?" And she said, "Well, I have a few cents." And they laughed at her. They laughed. They said, "You can't do anything with a few cents." And she said, "Let me show you what I could do with my faith when I put it into action." Jesus said to his disciples, "These things and greater shall you do. These things and greater shall you do." He didn't say, "These things and greater shall you pray about or shall you think about." We are called to pray and to act. And our faith lets us move beyond the fear. Fear tells us we're not ready. Faith tells us, trust that you are. You know, Will Rogers once said, "If you wait until you're ready, you'll wait forever." And when I read that this week, it reminded me when I was at a graduate school and I had my first job, my first boss was about 10 or 11 years older than I was. And I really admired him and I trusted him. And one day we were out to lunch and I was a relative newlywed. And he said to me, "So tell me, when do you and Barbara intend to have children?" And I said, "We're thinking about that. And we've decided we're going to save up until we have enough money to have children And he started to laugh and he said, Ron, if you wait that long, you're never going to have kids. That's what Will Rogers was talking about. In the wonderful book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Curry says that our basic nature is to act. And what we tell ourselves is really important. Languaging is really important in terms of how we act. And so he had a chart, and I'm going to talk to you about the chart. I can't show it to you, but I can tell you about it, about reactive language and proactive language. And so let me give you some examples. Reactive language might be saying, there's nothing I can do. Proactive language would be, why don't we look at some alternatives? Reactive language would say, that's the way I am. Proactive language would tell us, I can choose a different approach. Reactive, I can't. Proactive, I choose. Reactive, I must. Proactive, I prefer. Reactive, if only. Proactive, I will. Do you see the difference in the two? In one, we give up our power. In the reactive, we give it up and we make ourselves out to be victims. In the proactive language, we're claiming our power. I like to say we're showing that we're spiritual powerhouses. Let me give you another example of utilizing language. Years and years and years ago, somebody came to me and said, my marriage is really dead. We've been married for years and years, and frankly, Reverend Ron, we don't have any intimacy. Our marriage feels totally dead, I think, to both of us. And she said, and what's the reason I'm here is we're about to go away together for the whole summer and live in a camper, and I'm dreading it. And I said to her, let's think about what we could do. What do you think if every day, twice a day, you started to say to him, I love you? One of the things they had stopped doing was saying that. I said, what if one of the things you did twice a day, when you get up in the morning, and one more time, sometime you decide during the day, you tell him, I love him. I love you. Why don't you do that and see what happens? In the fall, when she came back, she literally came running into my office and said, I don't know how to thank you, but our entire marriage is alive again. What we say is so important. Jack Canfield, one of the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul, talks about an exercises he uses to show audiences the value of acting. And he said he has this exercise. What he does is he holds up a $100 bill and he says to the audience, who in here would like this? And he waits. He holds it up and he waits. And he says, after a while, somebody comes up and grabs the $100 bill. And then he turns to the audience and he says, you know, any one of you could have had this $100 if you took the action to come up and get it. And he says, action separates those who are successful from those who aren't. And I think what I'm going to say to you next is so important. In life, we aren't rewarded for what we know. We're rewarded for what we do. In life, we aren't rewarded for what we know. We are rewarded for what we do. And Jack said he has a 5-day rule, a 5 things a day rule. And what it is, he said, every day do 5 things that get you closer to your dream. So in other words, every day act in 5 different ways that are going to get you closer to your dream. And he gives an example, and he gives several, but one that I'll give you is after Chicken Soup for the Soul was published, every day for a week, he sent 5 copies of the book to companies that could hire him as a speaker. Every day, 5 copies to companies that could hire him as a speaker. And what he said that does for us is it helps us develop a habit of being proactive and creating your future. So Skip Pritchard is an author I read this week who wrote about ideas that can help us take action. And so let me give you 3 or 4. The first one is, don't wait until conditions are perfect. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. He said, if you do, you'll wait forever. Whatever it is, do it today, because there'll always be something that's not right. The conditions are never going to be perfect. And all you have is the present time. That's all any of us have. So use that present time. A second thing he said is, don't overthink. Don't get caught up in the paralysis of analysis, because when we do, we just can't move forward. And the third thing he said was focus on the present. And he said there's an old Chinese proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And he said, so if somebody had planted that tree 20 years ago, you'd be standing in shade now, but you're not. The best way to plant that tree so you're not standing in the sun 20 years from now is to plant it right now. In other words, focus on what you can do in the present. You know, one of the biggest truths of our life is that the people that get what they want get it because they have clear intentions. Intentions lead to positive experiences when we act on them. Intentions lead to positive experiences when we act on them. So I want to close this morning with something from Martha Graham, who wrote, there is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. We got work to do, so let's get to it. God bless you. Have a wonderful week, and thank you for being here this morning.